Listen, it's a story that I heard 2 weeks ago that I said over to whoever I said it, they were fascinated by the story. And it's a true story. The story goes like this. I heard the story from a Breslev Chassid, Israeli Breslev Chassid, that heard it from the source. He heard it from the person that the story happened to. This Breslever said that about 10-15 years ago, he learned in a yeshiva called Or Chaim, which is Rabbi Elbaz's yeshiva here in Yerushalayim. And there was a friend of his over there that was a Gingy, just said it was a Gingy, he didn't say his name, that got up one day and said his life story. And it started like this. He's an Israeli who grew up here in Israel, and he grew up religious. He went to the army. His whole life he was fascinated by martial arts and all types of different shitot, that is methods. All types of methods of fighting based on meditation, all these types of things. And he was a fighter. Essentially, he went to the Israeli army. He went into the army with a friend of his best friend. They went together, and he learned, Krav Maga. He learned everything. And as we know, what happens when Israelis leave? They all want to go on vacation. So they all go to the Far East. They go to India. They go to Nepal. They go whatever they do. Each one has his own. He decided he's going to go. He was religious. He said he's not going to all these temples. He wasn't interested. He believed in Judaism, believed that's the right way. He was going there to do all types of activities, all these types of tracks, of all these running and all these climbings and hills and mountains, and also to go to these masters to learn how to fight. Even better, Kung Fu and all these types of things. Okay. For a year and a half, they're sitting and they're flying around this mountain, that mountain. They're going to Nepal. They're in this place and that place, all over the Far East. A week and a half before his trip comes to an end, after a year and a half, he turns to his friend and he says like this, irony, we left the army to go relax, but all we've been doing is climbing and fighting. So the point of this is really, we have a week and a half left, so at least the last week and a half, let's sit down and relax. Okay. They decide they're going to go to China, to Bangkok. All right. They end up in Bangkok. They go to Thailand. In Thailand. So whatever. So it wasn't in Thailand. So some city in China. I don't know. Shanghai is in China, right? Or Shanghai is in Japan. No, it's in China. Shanghai. Tokyo. No mishane, right? Was there one of these places that we have no idea what they're saying, no idea what the signs mean, and everything just sounds gibberish. Even though we love it, we can't understand. That language is too difficult for us. But so they're sitting there and they decide, all right. So they're taking a walk one day around the city, not up the mountain, living the last week and a half, relaxing, taking in the views. And this is what the guy says in front of the whole yeshiva. He gave the speech. He said they're walking, and he realized in the corner of his eye that there was somebody following him on a bike. So he looks from the corner of his eye, who's this person? He sees, this is what he says. He says, I'm not exaggerating, there was an 80 or 90-year-old Chinese guy, with the beard that's like down like this, and the mustache that comes all the way down, literally like out of the movies, riding a bike. So we all know Chinese live to about 300 years old, so they first start riding bikes about 70, so, with these, they're probably from the Genghis Khan, who knows from what year, Yeah. He's living from the 1000s, whatever it is. I don't mean he lived about 100, but I'm talking about, the Confucius and all those days. But the story goes like this. All of a sudden, at the corner of his eye, he sees that this old man is trying to get to the sidewalk, to the sidewalk, and he missed the pedal. And we all know that if a 90-year-old guy misses the pedal and falls off his bike, in nice terms, you can use it as cream cheese, בעברית למרוח, פשוט. You could use it, splattered. He says like this. He said he jumped from where he was. He said it was 5 meters. He said he jumped from where he was. He did an insane jump that wasn't natural. He said he doesn't know where he got it. He jumped and he caught the guy in the middle of the ear that he didn't basically become, apple pie. Whatever. He catches him. He puts him down. He relaxes him. So all of a sudden, this Chinese guy turns to me and says, ba 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 ba. He starts talking to him in Chinese. He's Israeli. Guy barely speaks English. Forget about Chinese, So finally the guy goes like this, come with me. Okay. On the way, they figured out they got a translator. They got a translator. He takes them to these windy side streets and he takes them into this little house. He says it's like this little house like you see with the right? The four-edged roofs, comes in, everybody's sitting on the floor. He says there were 7 people there. Him, his friend, this guy, 3 children, and a lady. They start eating. They have all the smoke coming up from the food. Literally straight out of a movie. Okay. He starts talking through the translator. He says, listen, I'm getting old, and I see that my days are coming over. I am a master of the highest form of fighting, but fighting through your mind, where you use your mind, the energy in your mind, and you can do anything. You can do things that are not natural, everything. He said, for 3 months, I've been circling and waiting for an inspiration. When I fell off my bike and I saw you caught me, I saw that you're a fighter in your heart. And he said, I found my guy. He says, I'm going to teach you, if you want, the highest form of fighting that's above nature. So he doesn't know. He says to himself, oh my gosh. He says, I'm going home in a week and a half. He says we're starting in 2 weeks. And he's like, oh my gosh, 2 weeks I'm starting, whatever, my job in a Tel Aviv office. Do I know? He turns to his friend. He says, I can't leave. He says, for a year and a half, I'm sitting, trying to find the last week and a half. I got to do it. His friend says, listen, I know you're a fighter at heart. Listen. All right, go for it. He tells his friend to tell his parents that they shouldn't worry, that he just found a new method of fighting, and they knew he was, and they weren't worried. Okay, very nice. The guy says, come back to me in 2 weeks. See, meanwhile, brings his friend to the airport. Okay, his friend goes home. He stays wherever he is. This is all he's saying in Yeshiva in Yerushalayim. We all know where the Yeshiva is, Or Chaim, right? It's in the Bukharim over there. Famous Yeshiva of Bali Tshuva. He comes 2 weeks later to this hut where the smoke was coming out of the food. Everything smelled good. Who doesn't like Chinese food? And guy says to him, you ready? We're leaving tomorrow. Pack a bag. He says, what can I pack? He says, the only thing you can pack is actually literally is like 1 or 2 things. He says, food, we feed you. Clothing, we give you the clothing. They wear some sort of clothing, a robe, all that stuff. He says, what about my tefillin? Because we said he was religious. I said, nothing. He said, so he started having an inner conflict. What should I do? At the end of the day, I do keep religion, but here I can learn a new, this is my dream, to become a fighter. So he says, for half a year, I won't put on tefillin, I won't keep Shabbat, but through this way, I'll keep Shabbat better the next half a year. He gave his way, he maybe even meant it, who knows? Okay. He decides it's a one-time deal, and he goes. Now, listen to this. This story just gets better. This story is crazy. He says they leave the next day, but he snuck in a little Tanakh, to have a Tanakh with him, to keep Shmiro that his mother gave him when he was bar mitzvah. But besides that, nothing. He said the first week, it took a week and a half to get to this place in China. He said they blindfolded him. Only at night he was able to see that he shouldn't know the way. He said the first week or a few days, they took a tender. They took a bus, one of those buses, a Taranta, one of these buses that just, like the army has. You can imagine where they were going up in the hills. After that didn't even get them anywhere. They needed to take camels. And then from camels, they had to take donkeys. He said they just kept on switching because after that, you couldn't take it. They were going. Finally, the last 3 days, he said they had to walk with their feet. Uphill. And he says this Chinese guy who was 90 years old is doing it like he's a 10-year-old. This guy, he went to the army. He said he was built like a rock. He had a briefcase, that the tarmil, the briefcase that the army they wear, where they have a sleeping bag and all that. And he's finally after 3 days, the guy says to him, tomorrow we're gonna get there. The next day, after a week and a half it takes, he gets up there, and he looks down. He's on a huge high mountain, and he says, I've been to Nepal. I've been to the most beautiful Tibet. I've been to the most beautiful places. Nothing compares to this place. He said this place is straight out of a movie animation. He says he looks down hundreds and hundreds of meters into his beautiful valley. Vadi, like a valley. And in the valley, sorry, that's in Arabic, in Hebrew, whatever. In the valley, there's 4 bungalows, wooden bungalows, like little houses. All right, great. They walk down, it takes another day to get down, comes down there, and he says, what you see is 30 Chinese people, none of them speak Hebrew, definitely, none of them speak English, nothing. They're sitting there, they're all skinny, they haven't eaten probably in 2 years, they're doing whatever they're doing, they're trying to get to Olam Atzilus, who knows what levels they're trying to get through Koch of the Toma. They don't eat, they don't sleep. He's an Israeli guy, he's been working out for months or years, he's eating shawarmas, he's eating steaks, he's eating hot dogs. He comes in there, he's gingy. These dudes are like, they all have skinny little beards, and he's like clean shaven, and they're looking at him like, what in the world is this dude doing here? All right, he comes down there. What does he care? He wants to learn the Shita. He says the way it works is like this. He says there's groups, and it's levels. You have to master each level. He says the master, after the master brought him down in there, he never saw the master again. They brought him the master of the first level. He said the first level is like this. Listen to this. This is where the stuff gets crazy. For 2 weeks, for 23 hours a day, you cannot talk, you can't do anything besides think. You can visualize a word and say the word while you visualize it. They gave him some word in Chinese, and he said for 2 weeks. Rav Nachman says in the story, Rav Nachman says a story about the Chacham, right? The story of the simpleton and the smart one. The smart one goes and he learned 2 minutes everything. Why? Because we know when the Yetzer Hara wants, he teaches the guy in a second. He said what took a month for people to learn the first thing, it took him 2 weeks. 2 weeks he mastered it. Next month he had to master a new word. He sits there for 2 weeks and he's 23 hours a day. After 2 months he comes to a level where he says, this is the level. They bring him to a place where there's hot coals, for 5 meters of hot coals. And he had to walk on it barefoot. And not like in the movies where he's running. He says like you're walking on the beach. Barefoot. He says, he starts looking at the bottoms of their feet. Maybe Chinese feet are made out of layers. He sees them walking on coals like nothing, like they're walking in thin air. They said, the first 2 weeks, they said, concentrate again on this word. He's sitting concentrating. The next 2 weeks is you have to walk on it. He's freaking out. They said, but when you walk on it, concentrate on the word. He said, after 2 weeks, he mastered it. And forgetting, he burnt himself in a hurry, whatever. After 2 weeks, he mastered it, that he felt nothing, like he was walking in the air. He said, this stuff's getting crazy. Some Israeli guy for the army, he's walking on thin air. He said the next step was flying. He wasn't lying. He said they're able to get in the air about 5 feet, 10 feet. They can move. And he says also, it took 2 months just to sit and think about a word. And he's concentrating about one of these words. And he's thinking about this word over and over. And they said, think about it now and try to fly. I don't know what it means to try because we have no idea. But I guess he said all of a sudden he's 5 feet in the air. He's freaking out. Like, dude, this is like, he's not tripping on like LSD. What else is going on over here? You know what I mean? He's doing like what everybody says, like he never believed, like literally he wanted to learn like how to fight. They said this is fighting through your mind. And then physically he could do anything. Months go by, half a year, he never saw the master again. So, he's thinking, what's the master? What's going on? Listen to this. And all this time, he said he had a certain anxiety. He said, if I don't master this to the highest level, then I feel like I really messed up because I give up Shabbat, I give up tefillin, I give up kashrut, I give up on anything, that tefillah, I can't pray, I'm sitting doing this 20 there. He said, the only way I would feel good is if I actually made it. He said the last night he's there, master comes back and says to him, you're ready for my level. He starts breathing in relief, thank God. It was all worth it, Shabbat. Is ready to master the highest level, where they said that everything is like dust compared to this highest level. The word that they teach you in this level, and the things that you could do over here is you can eat a mountain. You know what I mean? You go like you do crazy. You can chew iron. You can do whatever you want. You're above nature, but everything. So he's getting all pumped up. He said, "This is what I'm living for." This is his whole. Okay, listen to this. The story. This is phenomenal. He comes the next day into one of the bungalows, and he sees 2 things in the whole bungalow. He sees there's a carpet, obviously to sit there and meditating, They meditate, you know why they close their fingers here? Because they don't want the energy to go out of their things, so it's avodah zarah, because we believe that there is no energy, it's all Hashem, and Hashem keeps it right, but, you have the carpet, the Persian rug full of colors, literally smoke on the sides. And he says, literally, like out of a movie, he says literally everything. He says the movie's got it right. They know what they're doing, the producers, you know what I mean? They literally go and look. He says it's literally, they come and check to build. He says there's a parochet, there's a curtain, a huge curtain, like a bunch of meter, huge curtain, also of colors. And they said, when we open this curtain, what you see over there, if you're able to master this, he said to this guy, he says, you're me. I'm done. My tafkid kilu. My job in this world, like, that's his job, is over with. And he starts getting excited. Okay, he sits down. They start telling him, first you have to go through all the words that you did. He starts focusing, but he mastered it. So after an hour or two, boom. What took him months, because once he got it. Then they said, now the time has come. The parochet, the curtain, was a sliding curtain that had a track, but with a beam of wood. There was like a little metal thing on the beam of wood. They said, when we open this and you see what's on the metal of the thing, then, all right, this thing is crazy. He starts looking. They slowly open up the curtain, with background music, like opera music. Not literally, but he's freaking out. Who knows what I'm going to see, like an angel, who knows? He opens the curtain, faints. Revive him, opens the curtain, faints. He said for 3 hours straight, he couldn't get a word out. Every time they opened the curtain, he fainted. So, when the guys in the yeshiva heard this, remember he's saying it, they're like, what do you see? You saw a demon, you saw a vision, like what do you see that you kept on, like you couldn't hold it, contain? He said, when they opened it, because he said it, they told him this is the highest, like nothing even comes close. Everything else is just like a preparation here. They open the curtain, he looks at the piece of wood and he sees Yud K Vav K in Hebrew. Yud K Vav K. Every time they opened it and closed it and revived it, he sees the same 4 letters. God's name. He realized in that instant, for a year and a half or a year, he's been trying to get to the highest level. And since he's 3 years old, every second he's been saying, every time he's making a bracha, he's saying Yud K. And this is after he's able to fly. After he's able to walk on the road, all he sees is Yud K Vav K. And he starts screaming at them, you cheated me, you lied to me, because he went nuts. He ran into his room where he was, and he took out that Tanakh where he hid, and he goes like this. Imagine this time. He goes, Yud K Vav K, Yud K Vav K, on every single Chumash, right? Yud K Vav K, Hashem, Yud K Vav K, Yud K Vav K. And the master is sitting there and looking at him, where in God's name, literally God's name, no pun intended, where in God's name did you get this? It says because they really had the thought that only they had the secret. And he starts screaming at them. And he goes, I want to go home. I want to go home. They're like, this name probably made him nuts. Some demon went into him. And he's trying to explain to them, when you're coming at 90 years old, at 3 years old, every 3-year-old in Judaism knows Yud Ke Vav Ke, Baruch Atah Hashem, Yud Ke Vav Ke, and it represents God. He went nuts. He lost it because he realized a half a year. And you know what else he lost? He went nuts that all his life he was trying to find different methods of fighting, and through this, and he came to the highest method. And really, every Jew has that method. Hold on, the story isn't finished. He sent him on a plane back home. He comes back to Yerushalayim. He comes back to yeshiva. He goes to Orach Chaim's yeshiva. They take him to a makubal to say the story. I don't know which makubal. The makubal says, tell me, what were the names that, like, a little bit, try to explain to me, what were the things? He starts telling him, even in Chinese, but it's something. He said, what were the things you were able to do? He opens Svarim, all these deep Kabbalistic Svarim that we're not allowed to even look at unless you're on a huge level. And he says, you're able to fly in the air? He says, that's because the name that you were using is the name of a demon. And when you're able to focus enough time, then the demon has to come and do what you're asking. And this that you're asking through his name you're asking him to help you fly. So he said the first thing, you know what happens with coals? You're able to, because 2 demons just came down and they put their hands on the coals and they don't get burnt and you walked on their hands. He says, you're able to fly? It's simple. 2 demons came and picked you up. You didn't feel them because it's spiritual. And he showed him the sefer, everything. And then he said, the next thing you're able to do this and do that and not eat for 3 weeks and do things that are above nature it's all demons. He said one name that I can use for Kedusha does all his stuff times infinite more. And he said, there, where they end, where all the master, that everybody's going to India to find all these methods of medication, I call it. Medication, it's just pills, but meditation, they end where we start. We start, every 3-year-old, Yudke Vavke. So he goes, he says, Rebbe, to the Mekubal, what's my job here? What am I supposed to do? What's my tikkun? How do I fix this? What do I do? It wasn't, everything God does. He says, your tikkun is now that when every time you take a glass of water, you take that concentration that they taught you and use it in 3 hours. Think, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam sha'akol ni'envari. Blessed are you, God, right? The one who's all the power. That what? He created everything through his speech. He said, when you can connect into that Yudke Vavke, and Elokeinu is also a name of God, but Yudke Vavke, he said, you can do things that they can't do because they're only using the Yudke Vavke through the side of Tumah. He said, you're doing through the side of Kedusha, and Kedusha is endless greater than Tumah. He said, the first time he made the bracha, Baruch atah Hashem, he said, I definitely didn't, some nuclear bomb was like, some reactor went off in the Caribbean island. He said the energy that he felt, he said everything that they taught him didn't come to a second of the thing that he did it through the right way, making a bracha to Hashem. And he realized that God took him to the other side of the world, and God gave him this love for fighting to meet this in the exact time when he was ready to learn how to concentrate, all to concentrate when every 3-year-old knows what to do. That every time we say Yudke Vavke, we have a power that, like it says in Kabbalah, that we turn worlds over. He said, I felt that, I lived it, I was there. He said, I found God, literally, Yudke Vavke, I found God in some crazy, the dark, it's called the Dark Mountains, Hari Choshech, where demons are, who knows what's going on there. And I was able, because Hashem is everywhere. God to the highest levels in China, and sometimes you have to find China, God, you have to find China and God, right? God is right, because China is in God. God's not in China. God is everywhere, and everything's in God. You know what's interesting? You know this probably, I'm sure people have heard this. The Zohar says, now, when Avram Avinu sent his children of Keturah, which is Hagar, it says to the far east. It says to the far east in the Torah, and it says he gave him matanot, presents, he gave them. Rashi says, what presents? He gave them all types of tumah. Where does Rashi get this from? The Midrash. Where is that? From the Zohar. Rashbi says that when Avram Avinu sent them away, he sent them away with all the kochot tumah, all the ways of, all the names. But he left for us, Am Yisrael, the real power, which is the Kedusha. You see that Hashem is infinite, that he had to just learn the way to concentrate, to take out the energy, the spiritual energy of Yudke Vavke. And we say Yudke Vavke how many times a day? Probably infinite. Kilo, obviously finite, but just during davening, if you look at Hodu Hashem, just in Hodu till Mizmor Shir Chanukah, the first piece of Tefillah, every second, praise you God. If you look at the Kabbalah Sfarim, I daven from a Siddur of Kabbalah, from the Matek Midvash, whenever it says Yudke Vavke, he writes Adon HaKol, and he gives you by the time you get to Mizmor Shir Chanukah, you thought about God like 80 different ways. But imagine having all that concentration. The point of this story is that wherever you are in the world, you can find God. And you had to go to this exact place because they gave you the tool in order. And it's just astonishing. He opened it up and he said, Yudke Vavke. And this is the God, this is the greatness. He's like, of course you can, but we know in Judaism, Yudke Vavke is where we start. And then you connect Yudke Vavke to other names and this all the Kabbalistic stuff that Arizal talks about and the Sefer Yetzirah and all these types of Sfarim. And I just thought it was a story that really touched my heart and really touched me that, everybody's going to find spirituality in Hodu, in India, and in Taliban, whatever, not really, whatever, Nepal, the Taliban, whatever's going on, ISIS. They end, man, when we start. So what's the point? What's the point? What's the point? Ask Hashem, show me, bring me the people that could teach me the real stuff. Obviously, slowly, in the right process, from the right side, from the holy side. Mizrat Hashem, the point of the story is to see the hashkach and everything also. The divine is everywhere. And through that we should also, and that, I mean this also, we went to nightclubs and we went to parties and went to that. Somehow we could find a God in there because it's all God somewhere. We just have to find the good in that thing, which Rav Nachman always says, to find the good. So even if we go to China one day and we're on the Great Wall, somehow we'll find God there. But stay in Israel, please. Do me a favor. All right. Chazak Baruch.